Good morning. So today is lesson 8 in COMP3025, mobile and pervasive computing. I'll just close up a few windows I don't need here. All right, so what are we doing today? I'm going to go over assignment 3. First of all, I should have mentioned that in my lesson objectives, so I'll maybe just update that. And we're going to do a few things, as I mentioned to those, just for those of you who arrived a little bit after 11. Today's lesson is not going to be too heavy. I know you've been working hard on your assignment, so we'll keep it fairly light. We will add some new functionality to our app, but nothing overly complex. And hopefully our lesson may be a little shorter today. I don't anticipate we'll need the full 3 hours. So we're also going to introduce assignment 3. Okay, so our plan, our agenda for today, we're going to go over assignment 3. We are going to look at how do we access information about the current logged in user from FirebaseAuth. We want to look at implementing scrolling. So how do we have, if we have a component where we can't show the whole component, how do we enable the user to scroll through that component? And lastly, we're going to integrate a toolbar, sort of a shared navigation bar that we can embed into all of our activities. We'll add some icons, so we're going to have this top app bar across the top of our app. And I know some of these are things that some of you probably figured out already. You may have implemented some of these in assignment 2. So I'll show you one way of doing it, but if you've already done these things and you have other ways of doing it or ways to do it better, then by all means jump in with your suggestions so that we can all benefit from those. So let's have a quick look at assignment 3. It is now posted to Blackboard, and it is due before our second last class. So basically you have 4 weeks to do it. And the idea now really is to complete your app. So I got a few questions over the last few weeks about just how much functionality was needed for assignment 2. Well, you needed some, but basically assignment 3 is the final kind of prototype version. So it counts for 20% of your grade, and it'll be due on Thursday, December 10th at 5 o'clock. So that is 27 days from now, which is quite a long time. Okay? So what do I want you to submit? I want the link to your app in the Google Play Store. So give me the direct URL so I can find it. Sometimes searching apps by name, it can be hard to find. Also, just resubmit your assignment link. And then if necessary or applicable, update your README file in your repository. Again, you're doing all your own work here. If you are using third-party code, make sure the same rules apply. Make sure you check with me and add a citation to it, the comment in your app, please. And again, my project on GitHub, our Restorator, it's there for reference, but you're not just copying it, downloading it, and modifying it. So exactly what are you going to do for this? So you're basically completing your app based on the initial plan you submitted in assignment 1. So I understand the assignment 2 you submitted yesterday. I understand that is not the full version, but you're finishing off the rest of the functionality that either you didn't complete or assignment 2 or you have left out at this stage of the project. So you have 1 more month to add that. I'd like to see you enhance the visual appeal. So for example, at minimum, you should be changing, picking your own color theme, getting away from the default so it doesn't look exactly the same as our app that we're building in class. And it should be easy to navigate around, easy for people to use. You're going to secure your Firebase database. We'll look at that maybe next week. You'll create your own launcher icon, so I'll show you how you can do this. And lastly, you're going to deploy it to the Google Play Store. So we're actually this will be next week's lesson content. We're going to look at packaging up our app and deploying it to the store. So you'll have plenty of advanced kind of notice for how to do this. Now, there is one kind of gotcha here that I know some students don't like. I don't love either, but there's really not much I can do about it. In order to deploy your app to the store, you do have to pay a one-time developer license fee to Google. That fee is $25 US, and it's a lifetime fee. So you cannot publish to the store without paying that fee. Now, normally I try to avoid having students spend any money in a course, which is one of the big reasons why my courses, there's never a required textbook. So I know you may not be happy about that Google Play fee, but keep in mind there is no textbook for this course, and if there was, the fee for it would be much more than $25. If this was an iOS course, the fees from Apple are much, much higher. Apple charges $99 US to publish apps, and that's actually an annual fee. So the Google $25 lifetime fee is actually not unreasonable in my view. If you absolutely refuse and you do not want to pay the fee and you don't want to publish your app to the store, that's fine, but I can't give you marks for deployment if you don't do it. So this is not really from me. This is what Google requires. I think it's worth it, both for the learning of knowing how to publish your app, but also the fact that when you're out job hunting, you can point employers to the Play Store and they can actually see your apps. If you don't pay that fee, you have no way to publish your apps for somebody to see your work. Yes, Edwin, it is not one account per app. You can publish as many apps as you like under that one account. So that's also part of the reason why I think the fee is worth it. And certainly if you compare Google's cost of $25 once in your life versus $99 every single year, the Google cost is far more manageable. So here's the evaluation. So the biggest part, one is for the functionality, for finishing the functional pieces from assignment 2, as well as for publishing to the store. So I want to be able to find your app in the store and actually download it to my physical Android device. There's 4 marks for the user experience, so that you've done some customization. The UI is clean, it's easy to use, you've picked your own color palette, and it's attractive. A couple marks for securing Firebase, because right now we just opened up Firebase that really anybody can read and write to it. You'll create a launcher icon. So the little icon is actually your own icon for the app. And again, I'll show you some tools next week. You don't have to be a graphic designer. There are some great places where you can basically describe your app, pick a theme, and it'll give you some options for potential logos you can pick and download. And then a couple marks for your version control. Okay, so those are the requirements. They're not overly complex, and you do have 27 days to do this work. Are there any questions about the assignment requirements? It is posted on Blackboard now under Assignment 3 in the Assignments tab. I will hope to get your marks done before next week's class. That's generally what I try to do, is try to mark everything within a week, if at all possible. I can't absolutely promise I will have the Assignment 2 marks back to you before next week's class, but I will do my best to get that done. Fair question. And I can appreciate that my feedback in Assignment 2 is going to help you with Assignment 3, so I will not take too long to get that back to you. Does anybody else have any questions about the final assignment? Now I'm just going to open up our syllabus for a second. No, me, Sam, it's not necessary on every single commit. No. Just if you make major changes to the app, you may want to describe those changes in the README. But not for every single commit, not necessary. One of the things that I might like to do in our class on December the 11th, we'll see how this goes, but I'd also maybe like to give people a chance to do quick demos of their app. It wouldn't be for marks, so there wouldn't be any pressure to come up with any sort of presentation, but there's lots of really creative ideas, and I know there's lots of really talented students in the class. So I think I would like to give you guys a chance to show your work and also get a chance to see what your peers are doing and even provide some feedback. Again, not for grades, but just for feedback and learning and collaboration. So if we've got time on the 11th, we might do that. I may even give you the option to do a quick video demo and post it in a place where you can get feedback. I'd like to offer that opportunity, assuming our schedule allows. Okay, any other questions about assignment 3 before we get back into our Restorator app? The final test is whatever it says on the syllabus, unless I have it. So the final test is 25%. 25, not 20. You can always refer to the syllabus for the grade weightings. We will also have sometime over the next few weeks another 1 or 2 kind of in-class learning activities. No, the final test is not multiple choice. The final test will be practical. You'll sign into the WebEx session, and I will give you an app to build in 3 hours. I will probably randomize it so that there are some different requirements, and you'll be given one of, say, 3, 4, or 5 different apps to build. I really don't I believe multiple choice is good for regular kind of review. As a large-scale assessment, I think it's a terrible format. At the end of the day, it's a programming course. I don't really care if you can answer questions about Android programming. I care that you can build Android apps. So the final test will reflect that. Okay, so we're going to do 3 different things with our app today. We want to look at retrieving user information and building a profile screen where we can show information about the user that's logged in. We want to look at how do we scroll, how do we make a component scrollable, and then we want to look at building a shared toolbar. So just to give you a taste of what this looks like, I was building this out in my sample project yesterday. So I'll just run it quickly and give you an idea of what it is we're going to be doing today. So I'll load my sample project. Feel free to open up Android Studio. If you haven't opened it for a bit, you'll have some updates to run. I'm going to sign in. Now, I'm not going to use the Google sign-in. As some of you probably noticed, you can't actually sign out with the Google sign-in. The Android smart lock on the emulator keeps you signed in. If anybody experienced that, the way to sign out of your Google account right now is go to the settings by dragging down and actually deleting the Google account from your settings. Otherwise, you can't actually log out, which is kind of annoying. So for today, to avoid that problem, I'm just going to sign in with email and password. Yes, it will take me a little longer, but I do want to be able to sign out. So I will just sign in with the username and password I created in my test Firebase database. And temporarily, I've set this project up that when I sign in, I actually get a profile activity. So we're going to build this activity. So it pulls my name and displays my email address. And I also added a terms and conditions here that's very long, but that I can scroll through. So we're going to look at building this activity first, where we can display information about the current user. And then we'll also look at building this scrollable component. Some of you may have already had to do this in your assignment too, but for those of you who haven't, we'll look at scrolling. And then you'll also notice I've got this little toolbar at the top now with some icons. So if I click on my add, it loads my main activity. If I click on my list, it loads my list activity. And I've created the icons using the primary dark color from my theme. This will take me back to my profile. So we could actually remove the floating action buttons that we've added for navigation. We could keep the logout button perhaps, but if we want to get rid of the list and add buttons, we can do it. So this is kind of a shared toolbar that gets embedded on all three of these activities, profile, main, and list. So this is kind of what we want to do with our Resto Radar app today. So I'm going to open it up. And we can launch our app in the emulator. So the first thing we're going to do here is create a new empty activity. We're going to create a profile activity. And we'll make it temporarily so that our app will load that profile activity every time we sign in. We won't keep it that way, but so that until we have our navigation built, we'll just let that activity load. We're not going to work with main and our list activity until later in the lesson. So I'll just wait for my build to finish. I'm not exactly sure what is going on here, why this is taking so long and not building, but I'll just let it finish running. Maybe close a couple things. I'm maybe even going to try turning off my video for now, because this is usually slow. It's not usually this slow. Okay, finally, so I will sign in here. Okay, so here's our app right now. So we've got our list activity and we've got our main activity. So I'm going to add a new empty activity now. I'll click on File, New. I'll go down to Activity, choose Empty Activity. I'm going to call it Profile Activity. So create a profile activity. Try the video again, see if it works. I think this works a little better if you can actually see me. So create a new empty activity called Profile Activity. You can accept all the defaults. And I'm just going to give you the XML that we need here. So basically what we want to start is 2 text views at the top. One for the username, one for the user's email, and then we'll put our logout floating action button down at the right, down at the bottom right. I'll just update my Gradle plugin. So I'm going to take the XML that I want, and I'll just go to paste bin and paste it here for you. I'll put the link in the chat. I think at this point in the course, we don't need to spend a lot of time designing layouts with XML. I'm happy to just provide you the XML we need. So our name text view, the appearance is going to, the text size is going to be large. The email will be smaller. We're going to use medium. And then we've got our same floating action button that'll appear at the bottom. So just copy these 3 elements. And I'll just dump them in to the layout for our okay, let's see what's going on here. Style. I can't even see these. I'll try one of these. Okay, I'll leave this in for now. I'm going to go to my Android manifest. Maybe I want to go to my... So we've got our material components here. Okay, let's go to Android manifest. I'm going to change this from theme.materialComponents. If I change this to app compat, in here it's going to be at style. No, it isn't. Sorry. Okay, it's not going to work there. I'll go to my manifest. I'm going to change the theme in the manifest. Sorry. I'm going to change this to theme.appcompat. Let's try. And, is this going to fix my issue? No. Okay, I'm going to take out the text appearance for now. Sorry. We'll deal with the text size later. I may even have a dimensions here. Yes, I've already got a heading we can use. So here we'll just say text size equals at demand heading. So we'll use that instead. So this will make the name text view larger. It'll make the text in there 24 SP. No, Mark, you don't. It's working for you. You can leave it. I'll just update my Gradle. And then I want to change the code on our sign-in activity so that when a user signs in, let's load the profile activity first, because right now there's no way to get there. So we'll go to sign-in activity. And I'm going to change the code we've got here. Right now, our intent loads our list activity. I want to change that so it'll show our profile activity. So after login, they get the profile rather than they get the list. We'll put this back later once we have our toolbar. But right now, that's the only way we're going to get our profile activity to load. So just change your intent in the sign-in activity so it loads profile instead of loading the list. We'll also want to add a little bit of code in the profile activity in the onCreate method. We'll want to identify the current user so we can display their name and email. And actually, I'm going to change the name of this. I should have renamed this. I haven't been consistent. I called this one name text view, and this one I called text view email. So for consistency, this should be email text view. So I'm going to rename that second text view to email text view. You can, you do not have to. So now I want to go into the profile activity. So in my class, so we're going to call get instance. We're going to connect to our FirebaseAuth instance. And then we want to populate the text views based on the current user's profile. So we've got our AuthDB, it's got a current user property. So if it's not null, and we've got a display name property. So this display name now I think it's saying this could be null, so it wants us to make it, asserted as a non-nullable. So when we sign up, if we enter an email and password, there is an input for our first name and last name. So FirebaseAuth will store that as the display name. If we use our Google account, it will be the first name and last name associated with our Google account. We'll also set the email text view. And in this case, we have access to the email. If we don't have a current user, we can either display some kind of default text in those text views, or we could sign the user out and take them back to the login screen, which I think is what we'll do. So we'll call a logout method. We'll also add a on-click listener for our floating action button. It's also going to call the logout method. So if we have a current user, display their name and email address in the XML layout. Otherwise, call logout, same thing here. So now we can write our logout function. So we can call sign out. We want to close this activity. And we want to take the user back to the sign in activity. So we'll use an intent. And we'll just import. So we've made this activity private in effect, because if there's no current user, we're calling sign out and loading the sign in activity. So even though we do have a non-null check here, these values should never be null. I'm going to run this code, and then I will put it up on Pastebin. If it's correct, I just want to make sure before I do, I want to make sure that it's correct. So I'll run my app again. And once I sign in, it should take me to this new profile activity, and I should see my display name at the top and my email address underneath. So let's give this a try. Try it in your app, and let's see what happens. So I'm going to instantiate this globally in the class so we can reference it both in onCreate as well as in our logout method. Well, I guess while I'm waiting, I'll put it on Pastebin now. Why not? If we need to tweak it, we'll tweak it. We're on the right track, certainly. So this is all going inside of our class. So I'll load my restorator again. Would help if I knew which one it was. I don't think it's that one. So my profile loads. It shows my email address and it shows my display name. Okay, so the code we've got on here is working as intended. I'm going to uninstall those other versions. Okay, anybody have any questions about the code in here in our profile activity? So our current user property is always going to tell us who this user is. And then we've got access to their email and their name. And you'll notice the name property is stored as a single field, single property called display name. We don't have, Firebase doesn't store the first name and last name separately. Okay, Lynn, it's a trick. I've been trying to do this because there's on the Android emulator, right, the Google Smart Lock keeps you signed in. So the only way I have found to get rid of that is to go to your settings. You can either click on home and drag up, and there's settings. And then from settings, I scrolled down to accounts, and I removed my Google account. I spent hours last week trying to disable the smart lock, and even when my device settings said that the smart lock was disabled, it kept me signed in to the Google account. So removing it from the emulator was the only way I could figure out how to do it. There may be a better way to do it, but I have yet to see it. All the instructions say, oh, just disable smart lock, and it won't remember you. But the current version seems to remember you even if you've disabled smart lock. So just remove the Google account. If I can find a fix for that, I will let everybody know. You are not the only one who had that issue. Someone else emailed me with the same problem. No problem. Okay, so let's add one other thing here. We don't really need it on this app. Doesn't really make sense to have on the profile screen. But I did want to show you how to create a scrolling component. So I want to put a terms and conditions here that's scrollable, where the text is going to be longer than can fit in the control. So I'll put into paste bin one more XML control, another text view. So you can grab the code from here. Hopefully it works better than the last paste I gave you. Okay, if you're doing this lesson on your own, you can get the Textview XML from the GitHub repository. So we're creating a text view, and we're setting max lines to 10. So only 10 lines are going to be visible at a time. And we're going to anchor this near the bottom. So I'm going to copy that into the XML of my profile activity. Oops. So I'll copy that text view. I'll dump it in here. And I'm going to set out a few resources. So the first resource I need is this, a string resource called terms. I'm not going to use Alt-Enter to build this one. I'm going to go into my strings.xml, and I'm manually going to create a new string called terms. Now, where, you might ask, are we going to get a big long boilerplate text of terms and conditions? Well, students, we already have one. I've put it on Blackboard for you. So create this empty string value with the name terms. Once you do that, you'll notice the error here goes away. And if you go to Blackboard in the Lesson 8 folder, this is a sample terms and conditions from this website, samplestore.com, and they've open sourced this So if you open up this text document, what I want you to do is copy the whole thing, and we're going to paste that entire thing as the value of our XML node. It's pretty long, but it's a sample we can use. So our text view is only 10 lines high, only allows 10 lines. Obviously, this text is much longer, so the whole thing can't be displayed at once. We want our item to be scrollable. I also wanted a little bit of padding. I'm going to change this. I'll maybe set a new dimension. I'll call it terms padding. And then we'll create this resource, and we'll maybe add about 30 dp of padding around this, so it's not anchored right to the bottom and pushing right up against the left and right edges of the activity. So then I'll create a dimension value resource here. I'll maybe set it at 30 dp for now. We may want to change it. So create a dimension resource, set it for 30 dp. You'll also notice it's like a regular text view, but we also have this property, scroll bars vertical. So we want it so that users can scroll up and down through the content in this text view. There's no horizontal scrolling. It doesn't go wider than our activity, but it can grow taller than the text view. So I'm going to try this out. I'll log back in, and we should have this terms and conditions text, the fine print being displayed down at the bottom of the activity. And then we can see how the scrolling works. So we've set these scroll bars equal to vertical. I'll sign back in. I seem to have broken my color theme. It's giving me an older theme. I won't worry about that right now. So it loads our profile, and we can see we've got the terms. So I'm going to click in the text. It says we've got vertical scroll bars. But when I click and drag, this should be scrolling, and it isn't. So this behavior is actually expected right now. It's kind of weird the way that the scrolling components work in Android. Even though we've set a maximum of 10 lines, which is what we see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and we've set the scroll bars to vertical, the scrolling isn't actually enabled. That we have to do in the Kotlin code with one line of code. It's kind of odd. You would think if we set scroll bars that the scrolling should automatically work, but it doesn't. So if you click in your text, click and drag up, it won't scroll. So we need one line of code in our Kotlin file to enable the scrolling. So I'm going to jump over to my profile activity.kt. We'll add that line of code, and then we're going to take a break. So I want to enable scrolling on the terms text view. So what we're going to set is the movement method. And we're going to set it to a scrolling movement method. So this enables the scrolling. So I'll run this again. And now I should be able to click into that text view, click and drag up, and I should be able to scroll to see more of the text past those first 10 lines. So I'll sign in again. My profile activity loads. So now if I click, I believe so, Edwin. Okay. It's not working. What did I do wrong? Let me check it with my test project, which does work. Maybe I'll just go out. Yeah, should work. Okay, I'm glad it worked for you. I'm going to log out and log back in. It should be working, so I'm glad it's working for you. Oh, maybe I didn't run it again. I thought I did, but okay. So it seems strange that we would have to define scroll bars in the layout and then programmatically enable the scrolling, but this is what Android expects us to do. Try one more time. Okay, there. So now I get a vertical scroll bar so I can move through. So this scroll bars property, there's basically three options. And if you click scroll bars equals, your three options are vertical, horizontal, or both. No, it doesn't allow both. I think it allows none, horizontal and vertical. So if you have a component that you want to display, but you know the content is not going to wrap into it, either vertically or horizontally, you can allow users to scroll. So for example, you might want it in a, as Edwin said, in a layout. You might want it if you had a list of images, for example, thumbnails, and you want users to scroll. You would enable the scroll, you would add the scroll bars to that view, and then you would enable the scrolling movement method. So it's 2 steps for this. Okay, it is 5 to 12, so I'm going to push what we've done so far to Git. Are there any questions before we have a little break? That's lesson 8.1. Profile plus scrolling. Okay, it's 11:57 by my count. I've pushed my code up to GitHub. If you need to reference any of it, feel free to do so. Let's take a 10-minute break here, and when we come back, we're going to start working on adding our toolbar. We'll be back in 10 minutes.